So in order to figure out what notes make up the different triads, we kind of have to go back and look at our scale for a minute. So let's stick to C major because it's easy to see and we like it. So I'm just going to draw a C major scale here. Okay, there is a C major scale. Now remember in the last video I told you to pay attention to the number 3 because of triads and also because it helps us figure out what notes make up a chord. And the reason for that is that we build chords using something called ternary harmony. Ternary. And what that means is that our chords are built on thirds. And when I say we build chords, what I'm talking about is the is all kind of Western music. Any classical music, pop music, anything like that is all based on this ternary harmony idea, which is chords built on thirds. And if you're, there's some, there's some Indian music, a lot of Asian music that's not built on thirds, but that will sound quite strange to us. Most music that you know, possibly all music that you know, is built on thirds. So let's look at it. We have a scale, and this is where the thirds come into play. This is our first note of our scale. This is our third, and we go up another set of 3. This is our fifth. Those are the 3 notes we need. The first, the third, and the fifth. That makes our first triad. Okay, so let me write that over here. First note, third note, fifth note. Hear that? Oops, I can't play them all at once this way. But that is this note, and this note. The first note of the scale, the third note of the scale, and the fifth note of the scale makes a C major triad because we use the scale of C. Let me say that one more time. If we start off with a C major scale and we take the first note, the third note, and the fifth note of that scale, that is what makes a C major chord. Okay, a C major triad, which is another way of saying a C major chord. Okay, so the first, the third, and the fifth, every other note, right? That gets us our group of 3 because 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, first, third, and fifth. So that 1, 3, 5 pattern is important for us to remember. Now check this out. Let's go over to our cadence song here. That's what we were seeing right here. This is in the key of C major, and they're playing the first note of the scale, the third note of the scale, and the fifth note of the scale. And then an octave, the first note of the scale again. First, third, fifth. That makes a C major triad. Now again, they don't play it at the same time here, but that's okay. So that's how we make the first triad. Let's do it in a different key, shall we? Let's do it in the key of G. Okay, so how do we make a G major chord? Easy. What we're going to do is let's write out a G major scale. Let's do it up here. Now, if we're counting out our half steps and whole step pattern here, you would know that I need an F sharp, oops, not on that note, but on this note. And then I get to the end of the scale. So I put an F sharp here. What I also could have done is not done that. Let's just be consistent. And now I could add a key signature. What I did this time is I just wrote from G to G and then added the right key signature. Either way works. I could just manually put the accidental on it, or I could add the key signature. Probably not both though. So let's look at how do we make a G major chord? We have a G major scale. So we're going to take the first note, the third note, and the fifth note. And that's going to make our scale. So first note, third note, fifth note. Okay? Now, new vocabulary word. When we look at a chord like this, what we call this note is the root. And I guess this is not a new vocabulary word. We've seen this before, because in the scale, what we called the root of the scale down here is the note the scale is named after, right? Same word applies to the chord. This is the root of the chord, because you can see, you can almost imagine the scale within these three notes, right? We're missing this note right here, and we're missing that note right there. But if you put those in, you'd have all the first 5 notes of the scale going up, right? So this is still the root because you can see these in that order. Now soon we're going to talk about what happens when they're not in this order. What if they're like that, right? Now you can't really imagine that scale in there anymore because there's a gap right here. So that changes things a little bit. That's called an inversion, and we're going to talk about that shortly. But for now, let's not worry about that too much right now. So we know how to make our first triad a major triad by taking a major scale and taking the first, third, and fifth notes of it. But we can do more with this. We can do more. What we're doing right now is we're using a whole scale to make one chord. There are more chords in this scale. And in order to kind of pick apart the chords in that scale, we need to talk about something called the diatonic chord progression. Now this thing, we're going to talk about it in the next video, but this thing is one of the most powerful things that you'll need to know if you're a songwriter, especially. But in any music theory, this is an extremely important concept. This is going to tell us all the chords possible in a given key. So in the key of C major, I can do a C major chord, right? We know that. But I can do a lot more chords. Look over here. Remember these chords, right? 3 different chords in this group, and they're all in the key of C major. So how do I figure out these other 2 chords? This one is my root, third, and fifth of the C major scale. But what about these ones and these ones? That's what a diatonic chord progression is going to tell us. So let's dive into that right now.